Okay, guys, so for the quiz, instead of just giving you the solution, I've decided to make a video and go over the questions because in some cases it was very poorly done. Um, so I'm not too sure if it's because, the content was somewhat easy and then you guys started underestimating it or something. So please, the thing about math is it starts off easy, but then out of nowhere it becomes difficult, right? So some of you did really poorly on it. So again, this was kind of optional, right? So if you do better on the test, I will exempt this quiz for you. For those of you who did good, I'm gonna count it for you, right? If you got 100, then good for you. I'm not going to be exempting that because that's going to bump up your grade even more. But for those of you who did poorly, you will have a chance to redeem yourself. So now let's go over the question. The first one should have been easy, right? Is this a function? The answer is yes, because it passes the vertical line test, right? At every single point, if you draw the vertical lines, it'll only intersect your graph once, okay? Because it's only intersecting once, then that means that this is a function. So this one was, I think, well done. Um, Determine its domain. Okay, so domain, remember guys, is bounded between, so x, right, has to be, um, you have to put the minimum value over here of x and maximum value of x. Okay, this is how you find the domain. Sometimes you'll have to include the minimum, sometimes you won't have to include the minimum. It depends on how, if in this case you have a point, right? So if the point is shaded, then you're gonna have to put this equal sign, which means you're including that point. If it's not shaded, if it's like an open point, something like that, then you don't have to put the equal sign. Okay, so that kind of depends on the situation. So the minimum x value that your function is taking right over here is what? Okay, so let's look at the graph. The minimum x value, so these are my x values, right? The minimum x value is this one, and it's -2, and then, so this is -4, so it's between -2 and -4, so that means it's -3, right? So that means -3 is my minimum, and because the point is shaded, that means I have to put the equal sign underneath, and then I'm going to have to put x. Now, there is no maximum, right? So, because I did not put a dot over here, right? If there was a dot over here, that means your function stops. But because there is no dot, this function kind of like goes on forever and ever and ever, right? So, technically, you could say that less than infinity, right? Because it doesn't finish. But you know, you can just if there is no maximum, right, then you can just ignore this portion. And the answer is just x has to be greater than -3 because there is no maximum. Okay, when there is no maximum, then you can kind of like ignore this part. Okay, now range, same thing, except for range, we're talking about y values. Okay, domain has to do with x, range has to do with with y. Again, it has to be bounded between the minimum y value and the maximum y value. Okay, so what is your minimum y value? What is the minimum y value that this function is taking? The minimum y value is this one over here. Okay, and if you kind of like look at your graph, it's in between -4 and -6, so it has to be -5. And it's attaining this value, right? It's actually touching that value. So I'm gonna have to keep this equal sign. So I'm going to change this minimum, right? Because now I know what the minimum is. It's actually -5. But for the maximum, right, there seems to be a maximum on the left side. Maximum is 8. But then on the right side, it doesn't really have a y maximum, right? So it just goes on forever and ever and ever. Because there is no maximum, you can just remove the maximum and remove this. Okay, so this is what I was looking for. X is greater than equals to -3. Y is greater than equals to -5. Okay. And this stuff over here, I was surprised by how many students got this wrong because I actually covered this in my starter question, right? So I don't know if you're paying attention to my starter questions or not, but this is not that difficult. So we're talking about the function g, and I have to find the value of this function when x is equals to 3, right? So what do I have to do? I have to look at this function and replace the x value by 3. So this just becomes 3, right? I'm just replacing x by 3. So instead of x squared, I'm going to have 3 squared minus 5, right? So this is just equals to 9 minus 5, which is, so this is 9 Just hold on. I'm just gonna, so 9 minus 5, which is equals to 4. Okay, so this was the answer that I was looking for. Now for my immersion students, I think I put x squared plus 5. So in your case, it would just be 9 plus 5, which is 14. Okay, so I intentionally sometimes change questions so that students don't collaborate too much. So the answer over here was 5. Okay, same thing for this one. We're talking about the function f. Okay, so maybe let me just use a different color. Um, so we're talking about the function f. So we're going to be looking over here. And then all we have to do is just replace this x value by 0. Okay? Because instead of f of x, now I have f of 0. So basically, I'm just replacing this x value by 0. So that's what I'm going to do. So my function is minus 3 times x, but my x is just 0, right? So minus 3 times 0 minus 2. And this is just minus 2, okay? Just minus 3 times 0 is 0, and 0 minus 2 is minus 2. This one is slightly different. Okay, this one is slightly different, the last question, because here what you're doing is you're replacing f of x by 4. So that means you're going to have to look at this equation and replace f of x by 4. Okay, so let me write down the equation. It's f of x is equals to minus 3x minus 2, right? Now I have to replace f of x by 4, so I'm going to replace this by 4, keep everything else the same, and you just have to do a little bit of algebra and solve for x, okay? So just, using BEDMAS, right? Because it's algebra. You have to use this in reverse direction. So you need to get rid of addition and subtraction first before you take on multiplication and division. So I'm going to get rid of this subtraction. So just by doing plus 2 on both sides, right? And then I'm going to get rid of this multiplication afterwards. Okay, so this leaves me with 6 is equals to minus 3x. And then you can just divide by negative 3, right? Divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3, and x will just equals to negative 2, okay? And I think this was it. Yeah, so that was it for the quiz. I don't think it was too challenging. I think these questions, maybe the domain and range questions, were tricky. We're gonna go over this again in the future. I did hold office hours, so some students did show up, and I was able to help them, right? I know that the office hours are optional because I don't want to force anyone to be there. I know that, right now, with the pandemic, we are all in a very difficult situation. So sometimes, I know students who are actually working to support their family, and there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. So if you can't make it, then you can't make it, right? I cannot really force you. Um, but when you need help, when something doesn't make sense, send me an email, right? Send me an email, show up on the tutorials, and then I will help you, right? I'm always there. I'm always there. I'm there for like 1 hour. Sometimes students show up for the first 5 minutes. I help them, and then sometimes they show up midway through office hours. I'm still there, okay? Don't think that if you're 30 minutes late or 40 minutes late, I'm not gonna be there. I'm always there, okay? I'm there from like, in your case, I think it's from 9 to 10. So for my immersion students, and for my non-immersion, I think it's sometimes, if I'm not mistaken, like from 1 to 2 or 12:45 to 1:45. I will be there for that 1 hour. Okay, so you can show up during the first 5 minutes or the last 5 minutes. You will find me. Okay, so please, you know, um, moving forward, I think the course will become more and more challenging. So please make sure you're watching my videos. And when you're stuck, make sure you're showing up to ask for help, because otherwise, you're going to get lost. Okay. And this stuff will haunt you when you take 20-1 next year. Okay. Because all of this will essentially repeat itself. Okay. So that is it for the quiz. If you have any other questions, please send me an email. But other than that, I think this is it. So thank you so much, guys.